welcome. Glad to be here with you all. So to kick it off, I wanted to ask you about how the last year has been for your organization. But before we jump into that, we were talking earlier, and you had a great story about how at last year's summit at this time, you had a connection with Samir, and one of the reasons why you're together on the stage today. And I think highlighting those collaborations are really a lot of what we're trying to do here at HITLAB. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that initial sort of connection, and then where you've been in the last year.
Sure. Thank you so much. And actually, the connection was with Rashane Sasson, my co-founder. Yeah. And it is a very similar story to Amir Kishan, that he mentioned that he met David Berger at a meeting. So at the meeting a year ago is when I was connected with Rashane Sasson. And I actually joined Birthvue in January. So that first session is when we met. And I can't even believe that in 1 year we've had so much progress. So this really is the type of conference that brings people together. And there's so much subject matter expertise. And it's unlike any other conference I've been to.
Awesome. So how's the last year been for you? What have been some of your highlights?
Yeah, so many things have happened that I'm going to consult my list. So we built out our solution. We joined the summer cohort of Stern Ventures Fellows this summer, which is a pretty competitive program. We refined our go-to-market strategy. We've done live user testing, and our first Birthvue baby is due in about 10 days.
9 days now.
9 days now, you're right, yes. We won the Mount Sinai pitch competition, and we met Carmen Vinsal at the spring version of this conference. So it was really that introduction 6 months ago that led us to pitching at the competition. And now we're going to be starting that incubator in January. So all of these connections due to this community.
And can you talk a little bit about sort of how you've interacted with the accelerators and the incubators and how they've supported your growth and your move in the market?
Sure, and I know Samir is going to chime in on this too, because different accelerators and incubators serve different purposes. So for us, the summer accelerator was really key in getting our focus. And through a lot of this conference, it's been discussed how it's important to solve one thing that's really obvious and really well. So we were able to refine our whole go-to-market strategy. So instead of focusing on the long lead that it takes to get into a hospital, we really looked at that in-home solution to answer the simple question of when is the exact right time for a mom to go to the hospital. And we saw the financial impact of that. And when we started talking to healthcare providers, it really resonated with them. And we had several opportunities to refine this pitch during the program, as well as improve our marketing and get more advisors and just have a ton of resources that made us ready to have that incubator pitch with Mount Sinai. Now, going forward with that one, that is really opening up access to patients. So we're going to be doing a pilot with them. So we'll have an OB champion at Mount Sinai who is opening up their patient population, but we have the opportunity to co-develop our protocols with them and really bring in that credibility of a major institution that believes in our solution.
Well, I think you mentioned the co-development piece. I think that's really a critical part of it, because when you're working with a partner, they want to be part of the solution as well as you learn and grow. So I think that's a great example. So congrats on that. So Samir, from your perspective, from where you're coming from in the investor world, how do you look at these incubators and the accelerators, and what are you evaluating, and what's your point of view?
Yeah, thanks. First, I'll apologize if I have to clear my throat. The California boy is not doing well with the 30-degree weather here. But so I think, look, there's actually an explosion of incubators, accelerators around the country now. I think it's like almost like there's a startup born. Every month I hear about somebody else launching an incubator and accelerator. So I think that's great in terms of providing access and opportunity to startups, and also for investors. We obviously look at companies coming out of incubators and accelerators. So I think obviously they're not all created equal. We get that. And I think you have to evaluate where you are in the stage of your business, and then you as yourself as a founder as well. So if you're a repeat founder, don't go to an accelerator or an incubator that's really going to teach you, focus on coaching and how to be an entrepreneur. Not that that's not important, but I think you're looking for deeper value add, more strategic. I personally am a fan of ones that have a strategic and a business partner kind of, co-running an incubator or an accelerator. So I think that's a really big thing, especially in healthcare. So I'm not saying that, please, ones that run just business-only healthcare accelerators, please don't come attack me and say you said don't have companies apply there. But I just think it just depends on the value that they're going to bring, right? At the end of the day, you're trying to do product market fit. You're trying to get voice of your customer, your user, your buyer, or you're looking for a pilot, right? And so I think you really need to evaluate, which one sort of makes sense. I personally I'm mentoring or advise a number of them, and I don't care, I'll shout them out. So sure, Cedar Sinai is one that I work really closely with. So again, the evaluation process for you to get in is so tough, and then you're pretty much going to do a pilot. You have all these clinicians sort of helping you, do product market fit. So there's others out there. United Healthcare has one. There's other health systems that are sort of starting to launch them. They're strategic. There are payers that are doing it. So I think depending on the customer profile that you're focusing on, I think I like those, some strategic element. And I think the other ones like Techstars and everything, I think they're really good, especially if you're new to this space and you're really trying to just learn how to, run a business too, overall.
And what's your perspective on, like, what does a successful relationship look like between the investor and the founder?
Great question. Well, first thing I'll say, at least for me personally, and just to back up, before I became an investor, I was an entrepreneur for 14 years, and I did four different startups myself. So I'm a unique person in this space. I'm the anti-investor, if you want to call it, but I'm an investor now. The biggest thing that I tell my entrepreneurs is call me when shit hits the fan. Don't call me when things are great, right? And I'm shortening it, but that's the biggest thing that I sort of say is like, you really need to partner with your investor. And part of it is just picking your investor. Sometimes you can't pick every investor that you have. You and I talked about this. But, try to have a mix of dumb money and smart money. That makes sense to you. Dumb money doesn't ask questions. Good, just stay there, right? Smart money, you want smart money too. You want people who are going to build that relationship with you. They're going to be there. Half my job is I'm a therapist. I'm an unlicensed therapist, but I'm a therapist. So, but call me when shit hits the fan, right? So I think that sort of fundamental statement sets the parameters for the relationship. And then, keep the communication going, right? I'm not one of those investors where I want to hear from you 4 times a year. I want to hear from you all the time, right? So I think open communication and really talking about what's troubling you. Because that's what we're here to do, right? Like I want to try to help you mitigate your risk and your hurdles, so you can be successful, so you can give me a damn return, right? So like it just makes sense to me that you really want to come talk to your investors when things are not going well.
Yeah, right. So knowing that Birthvue is in the women's health tech space and you being an investor, do you have any recommendations for venture funds or investors that are looking to invest in women's health tech? I've had this question quite a bit over the last couple of days as well. Do you have any recommendations there, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's unfortunate. We need more people to invest in women's health. And actually, I would even say women-led healthcare companies. So it doesn't only need to be just women's health. I think there's a lot of focus on it right now, professionally in my circles. Like it is a thing that people need to start focusing on. And so where you start, I think groups like this, right? Like HITLAB, the Women's Health Initiative led by Susan and Stan, I think is awesome. Ignite Health, I think Femtech, like there's a lot of interesting groups out there that are starting to focus on it. I think NIH is focused on it. So there's a lot of focus coming from government side, private side. And I think the other thing that's really interesting is when you look at a VC, and I'm just going to say this, if they have a women GP or managing partner, just reach out to them because they might not say on their site that they're focused in women's health, But I mean, let's just be honest, right? Like if they're there, they're gonna probably want to look at stuff in that space. So sometimes you just do like a list and you're like, oh, these are women's health investors. And you're like, oh, okay, it's like, 20 firms, 30 firms, whatever. But I think go a step deeper, and then really get involved in these communities, like Helen has done and others have done. You really need to get involved in those. I think, gonna maybe say something totally non-PC. Women like helping women more than men like helping men. I'm just gonna say it. You can attack me later. It's gonna be on LinkedIn, sure, whatever. But I really truly believe that it's a stronger community.
Yeah.
So.
Great. And are you in the fundraising space these days?
Yes, we absolutely are. So far we have been focusing on non-dilutive funding, but now we're looking for about $1 million raise, and we're prioritizing angels, family office, and strategics. But I think that what Samir was saying is really finding that alignment of the investors that have the same values and agree with what we're trying to do with our mission. But then also knowing that it is a relationship, and that the expression is, if you want money, ask for advice. If you want advice, you'll get money. So it's like having that ability to know that you'll have those conversations that Samir was saying, because good news travels fast, bad news should travel faster, and you shouldn't be afraid to talk to your investor when something is going south, and that is a much more constructive relationship. So we're really prioritizing on finding the right fit for our investors right now.
I'll make a real quick comment on that. It's kind of like with my kids, I tell them, you should tell me when something bad happens, because if I find out later on, it's going to be worse. So it's the same relationship, almost.
100%. And there might be opportunities to adjust earlier too, and not have a complete total disaster, which nobody wants. So, in your crystal ball, where do you see the world of women's health tech going in the next year and into the future? And what's your perspective on it? This is kind of for both of you.
Damn, I don't think we have enough time.
I
But
know.
that's a big question, right? I think we have obviously a election that's happened, so we have a change of administration coming in. So I think some of it is like wait and see, right? A lot of things are going to be wait and see. But I think if you pick on certain big topics, right? Abortion, in the women's health space, the new administration wants to focus on it from a state level perspective, right? And give them more power, maybe try to do a national ban, whatever it is. I think all these things that they have, there's going to be some resistance through our normal constitutional process. So you don't know what's going to come out on the other side unless there's certain areas that executive orders are written. So I think, some of the things that we were sort of moving in that right direction, yeah, I think some people are going to sit there and say it's going to be pretty difficult. Focusing on education for women's health, for cancer prevention, all those things are on the chopping block for the overall picture of we want to cut spending for NIH and CDC and all those sorts of things. But then on the flip side, the new administration really wants to focus on more innovation. So they want to get FDA to streamline processes and get faster. But then the flip side is, well, is safety and efficacy going to suffer there? Right. So I think it's a little early to tell what those futures are going to look like. But I think in terms of the focus on women's health, I think it's only growing. So it just depends on is it going to come from more private sector or public sector. I think the employers are going to really play a huge role, because depending on what the government does, I think certain employers, especially self-insured, are going to try to step up and fill the gap. So
I think on the hopeful side, what I could say without a crystal ball is that a lot of times when people can't rely on government or institutions, that's when there's an opportunity for individual companies to step up and provide things. And also just looking at the stats of the startup companies that were formed during COVID were more resilient, because when you're trying to build a company with all these headwinds and all of this complication that's happening, you really pressure test your business against, well, we can't rely on the government for funding, or we can't rely on this. So it gives you an opportunity to have a clearer focus. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. And in my crystal ball, I think a year from now, we're going to have the Birthvue team back up here talking about their tremendous success, and, more moms coming into the program, and and more partnerships and collaborations. I love that story, Rocher and you meeting last year and coming together. And it's the same thing. We had an example yesterday with Twig Health and Super Downstate. That relationship didn't exist before this event, and that's what this HITLAB Summit and Innovator Summit is all about. So really want to encourage more of the collaboration, the conversations, and networking, because who knows what great things can happen, and when you come to these events. And wishing you much more success in the future, and can't wait to hear your story in a year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.